Today, in episode 267 of Nos Cambiaron los Muñequitos.
You go on social media and you see these people talk about, don't care what other people think about you, that's empowerment, be bulletproof, which is against our human capacity because the brain feels social pain in the same regions it feels physical pain. We will always care about other people. And when we don't, what that means is I'm denying my true emotional experience as a human. The only people that genuinely, truly don't care what anybody else thinks about them are psychopaths because they don't have the emotional capability.
My name is Cristóbal Colón, and this is Nos Cambiaron los Muñequitos.
Nos cambiaron los muñequitos. Nos cambiaron los muñequitos. Nos cambiaron los muñequitos. Nos cambiaron los muñequitos. Nos cambiaron los muñequitos.
Thank you for joining us in this new episode of Nos Cambiaron los Muñequitos. We want to inspire you and help you deal with change with one story, one conversation in each episode. Y si te sorprende escuchar el inicio de este episodio en inglés, pues quiero aclararte que la conversación completa en este episodio es en inglés. Si no se te hace fácil el idioma, te sugiero que busques en las notas de este episodio el enlace a la entrevista en YouTube con subtítulos en español. And if you're a little confused about listening to the previous paragraph, it means that this is the first time that you listen to this podcast. And yes, almost 99% of all the episodes in this podcast are in Spanish. But for this one, I had the great opportunity to have a conversation with an amazing guest. So I got out of my comfort zone for this episode. Shame is a soul-eating emotion. These are the words of Carl Gustav Jung, Swiss psychiatrist, psychotherapist, psychologist, who founded the School of Analytical Psychology. And today we will talk about shame, guilt, and empowerment. Let me introduce you to today's episode guest.
I'm Dr. Abbie Maroño, or Dr. Abbie Maroño. I'm a behavioral scientist, a top 1% behavior analysis expert, and the director of education at Social Engineer.
Dr. Maroño is a recognized expert in the field of human behavior. She's a consultant, coach, TEDx speaker, and the author of Work in Progress, The Road to Empowerment, The Journey Through Shame. This is episode 267, and we're having a conversation with Dr. Abbie Maroño. Hello, everybody. This may sound a little strange because normally all my interviews are in Spanish, so I'm trying to push myself, get out of the comfort zone, and have this conversation in English because I have the opportunity to talk to this amazing guest today, and her name is Abbie Maroño. Good morning, Abbie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's great to be here.
Abbie, first, where are you currently living?
I live in Orlando now, hopefully permanently.
Okay, but you were not born in America. Where?
No.
Okay.
No, definitely not. Anytime I say that, everyone always hears my accent and goes, "No, that's not where you're from." I'm from Hampshire, originally in the UK.
Okay. But your last name is Maroño. It sounds very Hispanic. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so on my dad's side, my family's Spanish. We don't have a lot of connection with our Spanish roots, which is a shame, but we just didn't grow up hearing Spanish. But one day, I would love to learn Spanish fluently and get in touch with my Spanish roots.
Okay. I got, I met you, the first time I saw you is that Joe Navarro, he was
Yes.
already a guest in this podcast. It was an amazing interview. He was promoting your book, Work in Progress. And I said, wow. And then I saw your Hispanic last name. And then
Yes.
what I normally do every time when I see someone who with a Hispanic last name, I ask them, do you speak Spanish? Do you do podcast interviews in Spanish? And you say, no, but I'm willing to do it. So thank you very much for accepting this invitation. Abbie, how was your childhood back in the UK?
It's always an interesting question. I usually shy away from saying too much when we're asked in public or events, because you don't want to get too deep in. Yet my childhood was complicated.
Yeah.
The easy answer is, yeah, it was normal. But my childhood was complicated. I didn't grow up with a lot of love. I grew up in a household that wasn't very nurturing.
Okay.
I have two sisters, my dad and my mom, who split when I was very young, but my mom was very verbally and psychologically abusive. So most of my childhood was very confusing for me as a child.
Okay. When you on the book you said that your parents split up and then your father came back and you went with him to live with him. But about your mother, is she still alive? Did you have the chance to talk to her or try to fix some things of the past? Or
Yeah, so my mom is still around. However, I'm not in contact with her.
okay.
About a year ago, I made the decision, or I've made the decision many times throughout my life, to remove her from my life. And she always found a way to kind of guilt trip her way back in. And about a year ago, when I had moved to Orlando and was really starting to heal from a lot of traumas that I'd gone through, I realized that every time she had come back into contact, it would bring me to a really dark place. And I tried really hard to believe that she had changed, but there's just so much evidence. Someone changes for a minute and then they go back to how they were. And I just got so tired of being in that same cycle. And after I removed her, my life changed for the better, because that emotional weight was lifted. There had been, like I said many times, I had tried before as an undergrad, but my mum would claim she had all these medical issues and serious things that, were very hard to say, no, I don't want to speak to you. If someone's saying, hey, I think I have MS, the doctors are saying I have these issues wrong with my brain and my body. So you do the daughter thing and you go and you look after them and, show that you're there. But it was always just a manipulation ploy. So eventually I just removed that from my life. And like I said, I've been much happier since.
Yeah. Abbie, there's a thing on my spare time. I started exploring caves, and I was into speleology. Then I got into cave rescue and river rescue. And one of the things that I learned in that world of the rescue and safety is that I call it the rescuer priorities. So for a rescuer, the first priority should be himself. The second priority is the teammates, and the third is the person that they're trying to help. So it looks very maybe selfish, but it's I think that sometimes you just have to say, no, I have to do this because I need to protect myself. It happened to myself also in my life, that even though my family, I had to stay away from some of the members of my family for my own benefit, for my own health. So sometimes it looks maybe, I don't know, maybe cruel, selfish, but sometimes it's something that you need to do. So you have to start paying more attention to yourself and putting a distance between you and some people in your life.
Yeah. And, you know, the saying is you've got to put on your own oxygen mask first.
Yes.
And I can't help her. She is someone who, she is an antisocial personality, so she doesn't have empathy in the same way that most people do. And it's been something that has been an issue throughout my life because she wasn't able to show love the way that I needed. And she was, you know, like I said, very abusive. And you can't teach someone that when they don't have the capacity. So there was nothing I could do to make her change. And again, and I had tried, and the rest of my family had tried. But I realized not only is it taking from me, but me being around isn't helping her. It's just staying in that same cycle. So when I did finally remove her, I knew it was going to be difficult for my family because she will, you know, keep at them and guilt trip them to come to me. So it did feel selfish in that way, but it also did feel like I can't be the sister that I need to be, or the daughter to my dad, or the friend to my friends, if I'm drained all the time because of this really maladaptive relationship. So I decided to put on my oxygen mask first.
Okay. That's a great image, putting your oxygen mask first. Abbie, while you were having this troubled childhood, most of the kids are thinking, I want to be this when I grow up because this is what I want to do. I like this. When you were a little kid, what you were thinking what you would like to be as an adult, to go to college or to study? What do you want it to be?
Well, it changed after 16 years old. Prior to that, when I was very, very young, I wanted to be, you know, a belly dancer and a rocket scientist and all these things. You know, I kept changing. I wanted to be in the army, and then I wanted to be a princess. But as I got a little bit older, I was very severely bullied and very lost in myself. And I decided I didn't really want to be anything. So I kind of gave up on myself. And I got into some really serious drug addiction at 15 years old. And I gave up on my future. There was nothing. I just wanted not to be in pain. And that was all I really cared about. And it was only when I got myself through the drug addiction, I didn't have any support from my family. My sisters were embarrassed by me, so left. My dad kicked me out. My mom kicked me out. So I was really doing it on my own, and my dad got very sick. So after that point, and I was also kicked out of college too, which people are always surprised to find out because I was a professor later on. But once all of those things came crashing down and I decided I want more for myself, I didn't know what it was that I wanted, but I knew I didn't want this. So I got myself back into college. And my psychology teacher at the time, I had failed psychology very badly.
Whoa.
And she did not like me, and I did not like her. But I had failed too many subjects that she was kind of my last chance. So she'd given me a chance, and I wasn't allowed to redo the year that I had failed because they didn't want me for 2 years. So they said if I did both years in 1 year, did double the amount of exams, double the amount of lessons, things like that, I could stay. So that's what I did. And I developed a really good relationship with my psychology teacher. She knew about my mom, and she knew how much I loved my dad and that he wasn't well. So she took me under her wing. And from that moment, I realized that psychology offered me answers to why I felt how I felt. And when I started to be good at it, and I ended up getting nearly 100% on all of my psychology exams because I realized, wow, I love this. Okay. And from that point of this is the first thing in my life that I'm good at, I decided what I want for myself is I want to be a professor of psychology. And I found Paul Ekman's work in deception detection. And I said, what I want is I want to specialize in behavior analysis. And from that moment, psychology has been my whole life. And this is why I say education is a lifeline, because it just wasn't an achievement for me. It saved me. I found psychology and I gave up the drugs. I gave up my bad behaviors. I just focus on that studying. And like I said, from that point, I became a professor of psychology later on. And if anyone who meets me, they know instantly how passionate I am about psychology.
Yeah. Let me, I want to say this with respect. You're a very attractive person. You look very confident. You have a TEDx talk, and you are on the stage and you speak and you look very confident about yourself. And when we see you right now, it's very difficult for many people to believe this person that I'm talking to right now was very different many years ago. And there are a couple of, you call yourself like Abbie the speaker, Abbie the so you have many characters in your life. And at some point in your life, you were I don't know, maybe people who saw you maybe thought that you were like a disaster. But
Yes.
So you've changed a lot. You've besides education, you try. You have to work on yourself
Yeah.
to really bring you up to what you are really right now.
Yeah. And well, firstly, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And it's always funny thinking about my past selves, because now people that know me, they know me as Dr. Abbie and Professor Abbie and Scientist Abbie. But anyone that I went to school with, they knew me as the mess. And I remember my head of sixth form at the time didn't believe I would get into university. And everyone up until a certain point in my life had told me I would never do it. I would never get anywhere. I'd never achieve anything. I remember my mum laughed at me when I said about doing a PhD. She denies it, but it was, discouragement. And my teachers in school, when I said, I think I do want to go to uni, there was a lot of sniggering and okay. And even when I was at university, when I got in to do my PhD, I told one of the other students I wanted to be a professor. And they were all like, yeah, great. So do we all, but you're not going to get there. I even had my superiors at the time. When I went for a professorship or a lectureship, she told her colleagues and someone who was my friend that I would never get it. And she was someone I looked up to. And, they were laughing about me going for these opportunities that were out of my league. Now, I have a very different response when I say I want something. When I say this is something I want, I have the people that know me go, then you'll get it.
Okay.
Because I know every room that I go into, I might not be the smartest and I might not be the most talented, but I make sure I'm the hardest worker because I know I'm willing to sacrifice because my career really is everything to me. So I know whatever it is, I will get to it. Maybe I won't get that first opportunity. Maybe I'll fail the first few times, but I know I'll get it because I'm willing to work as hard as I need to get it. So people believe in me now because I've shown them. But it took a really long time for people to believe me because I was so different and because I had made so many mistakes. And people always say, I'm going to make this change. I'm going to do this thing. And we tend to stay in these really negative cycles. And I was from a tiny town, a small town called Yateley. And most people that I knew that grew up there are still there. It's not often that people really go out into the big wide world. And I removed myself from social media years later when I was doing my healing. Okay. And then I kind of popped back up and I was a doctor and I had been a professor and I was in America now living in Florida.
Wow.
Just a few years later, and people were like, who is this person? So it was a huge change, but there were lots of small incremental changes that led to it. And then you just see that big change. You don't see the daily changes.
Yeah. You don't see the struggle.
Yes.
So, Abbie, I already told you that my name, Cristobal Colón, means Christopher Columbus in Spanish. And when I was a little kid, I was so shy and I was so introverted, and I was so I don't know. I felt like I was invisible, and most of the people that went to school with me, they say, well, I remember there was somebody called like that, Cristobal Colon, but I don't remember him because I was invisible. So
Yeah.
it's people see the final product, but they don't see the struggle that
Yes.
that gets you to this point. And Abbie, I've seen a couple of other podcast interviews that you've had, and I think that you were a couple of years ago, you were more into different subjects, different themes. You were talking about body language and trust and many things. And suddenly you bring this book,
Yes.
and I think I think that there's like something happening in your life that made you somehow change your path. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, so I still specialize in nonverbals. My PhD was in information elicitation and nonverbal communication. And my daily job is I'm the director of education for an information security company. So we provide behavior analysis training and courses. For example, we were just invited to train the ICAC, which is inclusive of agents of the Secret Service, FBI, Homeland Security. And I trained them in behavioral analysis. So that is what I do. Mm-hmm. And I still am an expert in trust, in closeness, and cooperation. So that's what everybody expects. And I have a book coming out in that field. And then this field is something that I did for personal reasons, for my own personal growth and because of my love of psychology. But I did have a background in dark psychology. Mm-hmm. So my first publications were on serial killers. That was how I gained my connections with the FBI very early on. I have publications in cannibalism and understanding, some really dark topics. And whenever I put an ethics application in, everybody would kind of sweat because they're like, God, what is she going to ask to study now? So I was never in the positive psych field. I personally was in my own research, but this book is very positive psych. There's no dark psych in that book. And even in my everyday work now, I don't really do dark psychology. I don't do forensics in the way that I did it. I apply positive psychology to elicitation. So it was surprising, but the reason that I made this change, and even as a person, it was surprising because I was not an open person. I was not an open book. I've always been very, very private, and everybody knew me very professionally, and I presented very professionally, to the point that people would say I had no personality because I would just show up, do the work. I was just a robot. Wow. That's how I thought I had to present to be a professor. And a lot of it was because I was hiding from my past. So I didn't want people to see those things. So I thought I had to be ultra professional. But I saw so much pain in people because I do a lot of volunteering with the Innocent Lives Foundation. So I teach people trauma recovery and emotional regulation, and we work to catch child predators and send the cases to law enforcement. And when I was trying to help people on these topics, I wasn't someone they could relate to. And I had a previous student of mine say, what do you know about struggle? You've had everything given to you. Wow. And I said, how could you say that? Like, how would you think that? And she said, I can just tell by the way you carry yourself. And I've had nothing given to me in my life. I've fought for everything that I've had, and I still fight for everything that I have. I'm in a foreign country alone, trying to pay my own way and survive and work in an industry filled with very successful people. And I'm here as an individual trying to make it. And I've never really had a support system. So it was just a shock to me. And I really stepped back and thought about, well, is this what other people think? And it turns out everybody in my company had spoken to the CEO and said, I think Abbie hates me. And he was like, why do you think that? I was like, because she acts like it. And he was like, no, she's just British. She's just blunt. I wasn't warm. And I realized I was trying so hard to be something that I'm not. And because I am a very nurturing person, I've had that taken advantage of a lot in my life. So I thought to be successful and powerful, I had to be cold. Okay. So I presented that way. I presented as cold and professional, and it wasn't doing me any justice, and it wasn't making other people feel good in my presence. And I had done so much work on myself to get myself through traumas because I'd never had the support that I needed. I always had to figure it out alone. And I realized that, I was trying to give that help to other people, but I wasn't someone they felt comfortable to receive it from. So I realized I just have to be honest. I have to be authentic. And if I'm going to help people, I have to be someone people feel safe coming to. So I started to open up a little bit, and the response back was so thankful that I started to open up a little bit more. And other people were like, you know what, let me be open too. And from that point where I started to see that it was helping other people, I did a speech on some of the traumas I'd gone through. And the response was just so overwhelming. I realized this has got to be the change. Now I have to stop trying to present in a way that I'm not and just be authentic. And that's the change that I've made over the year. And I thought that it could be a hindrance to my career, saying, hey, I made all these mistakes. But actually, it's been the opposite. It's been a stepping stone for me, because people now want to learn from someone who is human and not a robot.
Yeah. Abbie, I'm not a body language expert as you or Joe Navarro, but when I see your TEDx speeches and other interviews that you've had, sometimes I see that while you're talking there, I see you getting emotional about what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you think that all those presentations and speeches and conferences really have helped you heal? Does speaking about your story really helps you heal?
Yes, definitely. And I think I do have an advantage in that I study psychology. So when I couldn't figure out why I was behaving the way that I was and why I was feeling that way, I turned to the literature, because I'm trained to understand things by, okay, what does the science say about it? So when I couldn't figure out what I was feeling or what I was doing, I just said, okay, well, let me step back and let me study it. I'm not me for this point. I'm just a data point. And doing so has really helped me. And obviously studying nonverbal communication, I've learned how to present myself, and studying psychology and emotional regulation. When I have a situation where I want to respond one way, I have the understanding of why do I feel like I want to respond this way and what's a better way to do it. And it's such a powerful tool, that understanding, because I would say with nonverbal, say you want to present as a confident presenter, but you're taking in information that says it's presenting confidently, but it's actually presenting as a dominant person, which is a very different effect. Mm-hmm. I might be taking in that information with the right intention, but because the information going in is incorrect, the output's going to be wrong. Having that understanding of the science allows me to take in the correct information and then have the correct output. So I see a lot of people, they really want to self-improve. They really want to heal. They really want to, improve their nonverbals, be a good speaker, but they go to the wrong places for that information. They go to TikTok, or they go to these other self-help books that are well-intentioned, but they're not based on science. Yeah. So they take in information thinking, yes, I really want to be better, and they implement it. But the information itself is not founded in true human behavior, not the science. So as amazing as they might be implementing that knowledge, the knowledge itself isn't helping them. So the output isn't what they want. So I really wanted to give people the actual science, because we want to make a change, and I wanted to make a change, and I had that advantage of science. And science isn't always accessible. Like when I write research papers, I used to get offended when people wouldn't read them. And I'm like, why don't you want to read this really hefty paper on counterterrorism? Like, why don't you want to read this and read all of my data analysis? And you realize, well, it's not fun. And people who aren't trained to understand it won't understand it. Just like I won't understand industry reports from the cybersecurity sector that the rest of my team do, because that isn't my training. And also a lot of science is behind a paywall too. So even if you do understand it, you can't access it. So there's not the accessibility. And that's why I made my motto, making science accessible, because I realized I had an advantage that a lot of people don't have, and they really want to make that change. So if I can provide them that science the same way I did, they can make the change. They can start implementing the actual correct information instead of that information that TikTokers present really confidently. I can say anything confidently enough and it looks correct, but it doesn't mean that it is.
Okay. Abbie, your book is Work in Progress, The Road to Empowerment, The Journey Through Shame.
Yes.
There are a couple of concepts there that are really very important that I would like to go through them. First, you talk about the journey through shame, but I would like to talk about what's the difference between shame and guilt. So sometimes in a lot of places in your book you say shame, guilt, embarrassment, many other words, but what's the difference between shame and guilt?
Yes, that's a great question. So shame and guilt are overlapping, and there's a lot of confusion about the differences, but shame is really a negative evaluation of oneself or one's behavior. And it leads us often to feel feelings of worthlessness. Guilt is really behavior directed and other directed. So you feel guilt because you've done something, and usually it has an effect on other people. Now, guilt doesn't necessarily lead to a negative evaluation of oneself, because I feel guilty that I've removed my mom from my life, because it is sad to have to do that. And I still don't want to think about her hurting. Even though I want that relationship to be gone, I don't wish her any pain. That's the last thing I would wish. So I feel guilty, but I don't feel shame, because shame is that negative evaluation of oneself. I know that it's the right thing to do. Like, you might end a breakup and feel guilty, but know that this is the right thing so you don't feel shame. When you behave in a certain way or commit an act and you feel shame, it's not just about the behavior, it's something to do with how I feel about myself. And often the reason that shame is, it's a taboo thing. People talk about guilt all the time. People don't want to talk about shame. And that's because it's so deeply personal. Yeah. But it's also very misunderstood. So we always feel that feeling of shame is that feeling of worthlessness, or I'm a failure. But that's actually toxic shame. Shame itself isn't necessarily a toxic thing. What shame is just a signal, and it has an evolutionary founding in that we're a social species. When we feel shame, it means that we've behaved in a way that is morally or socially reprehensible. And when we feel that shame, it means, okay, I need to make a change. So shame is just saying something you're doing or something you have done is not ethically or morally correct, so it needs to be changed. And if we listen to it, we can make a change. And studies have shown that when people feel shame after a behavior, they're more likely to make a change than if they don't. But because it feels so personal, often we run from it. Because instead of feeling shame for the behavior, like I did a bad thing, we feel shame to ourselves. I am a bad person, and we feel shame for our emotions. We take them very personally. I feel anger, so I feel I'm an angry person. Instead of listening to a situation made me angry, and why did it make me angry? Let me listen to my emotions. We take them so personally and we self-direct them. And because shame is that focus on the self, it can be really embarrassing too, because usually they come from, something like maybe trauma or something that's unhealed, and it's really uncomfortable, and because society doesn't facilitate the conversations about shame, we really bury it, so we can't heal it.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, you were born and raised in UK, and there's here in this side of the ocean, there's a Saturday Night Live. There's this comedy program that's been for almost more than 40 years. And I remember the sketch with Chris Farley, and it was like a talk show, and he was interviewing Paul McCartney. And the thing is that every time that Chris Farley said a stupid question, what he felt was a stupid question, he was punishing himself for how bad he was. So I was listening to you, and I was remembering that sketch because it's a perfect example of feeling shame. But there's another word in your title. It's called empowerment. And you were
Yes.
talking earlier about TikTok and people saying things on
Yes.
social media. So maybe some people, maybe I think that most of the people get a wrong idea of what empowerment really means, or what means healthy empowerment means in their lives.
Yeah, and empowerment really has become a buzzword. And there's so many toxic notions. We hear, take me as I am or not at all is one that really gets under my skin, because it's this idea of you need to change and they need to change. But I don't. How dare you ask me to change? We should all grow. No one is perfect. We're all imperfect. And it's a very selfish notion. And I get you shouldn't make people change at their core, but we should always be ready for growth. And there's also notions of, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't get me at my best. And again, that can give a really toxic notion, because although, yes, people should stay with us through the bad times too, it gives this idea that people need to somehow put up with mistreatment to be worthy of our good moments. No, that's not empowering. It's empowering to always consider other people. Just because you are suffering does not mean that you don't have to be responsible and accountable for your behaviors. Even in suffering, you are still responsible for how you treat people. It's not empowering to say, well, I'm suffering, so you have to be there for me to deserve me at my best. It's not. And there's also this idea of, women's empowerment. Well, but what about men? And then men go, yeah, but what about us? So diss women and women diss men. And it's kind of like a battle. And there's just so much misinformation about empowerment. And we're just fed all over social media, these notions. And what doesn't help is there's no unified definition of empowerment, both private sector or in academia. But what empowerment really is, if we really dig deep, is it's a deep self-understanding and self-acceptance. And the way that I like to phrase it is, empowerment is you can't use me against me. It's so deep in self-understanding and self-acceptance that I've accepted who I am. I've accepted who I have been. And you can't hurt me by reflecting those notions of who I have been and who I am back at me. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. Doesn't mean I don't feel I need to be improved. It just means I've accepted it and I'm working on growth. And that's why I called it work in progress too, because empowerment isn't something that's reached and then we're like, yes, I'm done. I'm empowered. No more work to do. I wish it was. I wish it was that simple, but life changes. We continue moving. I remember when I finished my PhD and I got my Viva completed, I was awarded the PhD, and I finished the video call, and you expect the world to be different. I was looking, why is no one outside my window cheering for me? I just had this big event. Yeah. Or on the opposite side, we lose someone. We go through grief. We find out news that we've just lost someone we love, and we expect the whole world to stop and grieve with us. But it doesn't, because life keeps moving. And that's why when you feel empowered, it's something you need to work at. You need to maintain. You need to keep growing. You need emotional resilience, because it's never going to just stay static. Life is going to keep moving and things are going to change. And as long as you have that self-acceptance and self-understanding, but realize that self will change and will adapt. And as long as you have those things coupled with emotional resilience, you're going to be good. Doesn't mean that you won't go through those periods where it hurts or it's fantastic and then it's awful. It just means you can handle those changes. And again, throughout those changes, you can't use me against me.
Yeah. Abbie, there's in Puerto Rico, we have a lot of people say this. They say, yo soy así, breguen con eso. When I translate it, they say, this is who I am. This is who I am, deal with it. So it may look like self-acceptance, but
yes,
and confidence, but I think that it's really just creating this wall,
yes,
surrounding you. So this is me. I don't have to change. There's nothing wrong with me. Everything, you are the one who are wrong. So it's difficult. So many
Yeah.
people will confuse what is self-acceptance.
Exactly. And when I hear people say that, when they say, take me as I am, or I don't need to change, and they say it's empowerment, actually what it is just change resistance in a cloak and denial. So when people say that, I realize, ironically, they're the ones that need to change the most, because, it's so easy. You go on social media and you see these people talk about, don't care what other people think about you. That's empowerment. Be bulletproof, which is against human capacity, because the brain feels social pain in the same regions it feels physical pain. We will always care about other people. And when we don't, what that means is I'm denying my true emotional experience as a human. The only people that genuinely, truly don't care what anybody else thinks about them are psychopaths, because they don't have the emotional capability. That's not what I want to be. And that's not where anyone really should aim to reach. When we see these people on social media say they don't care what people think, all of these things, and I'm so perfectly happy how I am, it just is change resistance. And in other words, I'm denying my true emotional experience, because their brains are wired just like ours, but they've shut off those regions, or they're denying it. I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
I want to be authentic. I actually want to feel my emotions to their full capacity, but I want to learn how to regulate them. And saying, I don't need to change, I'm empowered like this, is not helping me. It's not helping me be better, because how many times have you had a conversation with someone who is so unchanging and so arrogant in themselves that they won't accept any idea that they need to improve or change or grow? And it is infuriating being around them. I recently had someone come and visit who was very much like that. And every second you're like checking your watch, like, when are you leaving? I don't want to have that effect on people.
Yeah.
I want to make people feel good in my presence. So being unchangeable is not going to make people want to be around you either.
Yeah, I don't know how it was in back home when you were growing up, but I remember when I was a little kid, and there's those yearbooks, and when you graduated from high school or anything, there's your picture, and you get your signatures and messages from the rest of the kids on the school, and also it's very popular for them to say, "Never change, stay the same." So.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, it's a buzzword, never change and don't look back, all of those things. And I say the opposite, look back, absolutely look back, but don't stay behind. Look back and learn, and allow that past to feed into your future, but in a positive way. Because if we don't look back, we're going to keep continuing those negative cycles because we don't understand them. Look back to understand and change. But yeah, we didn't have those yearbooks that you guys have, but I do love looking at people's quotes, because some of them do make me laugh, because they're all buzzwords.
Yeah.
Some are great and hilarious and really meaningful, but the majority are those buzzwords of empowerment and don't change and all of those things.
Yeah. Abbie, sometimes when you said that we have to start looking back and learning from it. But when we look back, sometimes we feel shame about things we see. And now you're saying that shame shouldn't be like a burden.
Yes.
Shame should be like a tool to improve yourself, to grow, to become a better person. How do you use shame to what are the functions, the purpose of you using shame to improve yourself?
So when we feel shame, like I said before, we tend to direct it towards ourselves instead of our behavior, because shame is ultimately a signal. All of our emotions are just signals, and they might be maladaptive in the messages that they're sending, but it's for a self-protective reason, because that's what emotions ultimately are there for, to protect us. And there's this belief that emotions are irrational and lead to irrational decision making, but that actually isn't what the literature shows. Emotions help us make decisions that are better for us, but we allow our emotions to take control, and we don't dig deep enough to understand what signal they're sending. So when we feel that shame, we need to understand why we feel it to then work on adapting and changing so we don't feel it in the future. But again, what people tend to do is they feel that shame and I acted in this way. So therefore, I feel shame about failing because I'm a failure. So we need to recognize if we've moved the target from behavior to self, and that's the first step. And when we feel that, we feel I'm feeling like a failure. That's where I go, okay. Well, actually, my emotions, I'm taking them way too personally because our emotions tell us about acts. And if I take them all personally, they're not telling me about my character. I can change, I can grow. So I try and redirect it to behavior and then think, okay, so I feel shame for this thing that I've done or this thing that I've said. I recognize that now, and I'm not going to run from it because now everything in my body is saying, this feels awful, look away, look away. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to try and understand it. So now I try and understand, why did I do it? What am I running from? What am I escaping from? I had a pretty horrible trauma earlier in my life I had sexual assault, and I didn't fight back. And I am someone that prides myself on being strong and resilient. And I always had the nickname, I don't know if you watched Game of Thrones. Everyone said that I reminded them of Arya Stark because I always fought for myself. So I felt so much shame that I didn't fight, and I hid from it for such a long time. And it took me about 4 years after it happened to actually deal with the fact that it happened because I was in denial. And I felt shame for the behavior. So what I did is I sought to understand the behavior. And it was the science that allowed me to understand that in a situation where we feel fear and we don't think that we're going to be able to escape, our body will immobilize itself. So it goes into a freeze response and it shuts down our ability to fight. And when I understood the behavior, because I stopped running from shame, it allowed me to remove the shame because I realized, oh, I'm not weak and defective. My body was actually doing what it could to keep me safe. So actually, that's a form of strength, that it was doing anything it needed to do necessary to keep me safe. So instead of feeling anger towards my response and shame, I learned to thank my body for trying to keep me safe. And then I kind of let a lot of that emotion go. And obviously it took time, and that understanding doesn't instantly make you feel better, but listening to that shame and working on it really helped me grow. So every time we feel it, we have to think, what is it trying to tell me? And again, it's uncomfortable because it's not nice to self-reflect and go back to those horrible moments. I felt a lot of shame after my dad had a stroke later in life, and I couldn't figure out why I felt shame. And I realized it was because I wasn't able to care for him the way that I needed to, because I went back and finished off my PhD, and I was feeling shame, like I'm not a provider, I wasn't there. And again, I tried to untangle it, and I realized that the shame was coming from the fact that I never had nurturing when I was a kid. My parents didn't nurture me the way that they needed to. I felt this need to give everybody else nurturing and take from myself and give to them. And anytime I didn't give everything I possibly could, I felt shame because I felt like I'm not good enough. I'm not providing enough. And that was a really hard lesson because I had to go all the way back to some really hard moments in my life to figure out, where is this feeling coming from? So it isn't easy. And I understand why people really avoid doing that work to explore shame, because the roots of it, they're difficult and they're painful. And it isn't what we're led to believe empowerment is. If you read a book about empowerment, it gives you this notion of, I'm going to go sit under a tree and I'm going to cross my legs and I'm going to meditate, and flowers are going to grow around me and the sun's going to come out and I'm going to know who I am after that. That isn't how we grow. It is painful and dark and messy and takes time. And that's the reality of it. And that's what you have to go through to understand shame. But when you do that, you come out the other end a much happier, more authentic person. But it's just a tough journey to get there.
Abby, you talk about sitting under a tree and meditating, and I remember a couple of years ago I saw a book from a guru. I don't know. I don't remember her name. The title of the book was "The Guide to Immediate Enlightenment."
Yes.
But that was. Then I saw a couple of years later a second part to that. The Guide to Immediate Enlightenment Part 2. So it was not.
Yeah, but aren't I already empowered by and enlightened by that first part?
It was immediate, but it took two books.
Yes.
So when we talk about the tools that we use to explore shame, you talk about many things on the book. I don't know, maybe journaling, mindfulness. There are a couple of things. What do you suggest? What do you really recommend as tools to work on your shame, to try to work on yourself?
Yep. So emotional resilience is key. And developing emotional resilience is that self-understanding. And we need to really understand what signals our emotions are sending us. So mindfulness has been proven to be so effective. And we know when we're struggling, parts of the regions of our brain associated with self-reflection, like the insula and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, they shut themselves down when we go through traumas to try and protect us. Mindfulness can reboot activation in those regions. So if you say, oh, well, that's just hippie rubbish, it isn't. It's founded in neuroscience. But it can be really confronting for people and really overwhelming to make those big changes. And obviously therapy is really important. But again, not everybody has access or is ready. So journaling is really just a good first step. Because what you find, and it doesn't have to be daily, you don't need to put yourself on a schedule where you say, okay, I have to do it at these times, because then it stops being effective. Just when you feel something, sit down and writing how you feel. Don't worry about editing. Don't worry about making it make sense or be readable. Just brain dump onto a page. Just let it out. Because what you find is those thoughts are rattling around your head and they're really overwhelming as you try and articulate them in any way. And whether you want to journal, with words, or maybe you want to try and get it out through art, just getting it out. Most people, I would say, try and articulate it in words, but for some people, they're just very reluctant. So maybe in a song, if you're a singer, maybe in a painting, if you're a painter, or a drawing, just get it out. Because as it's coming out, what you'll realize is things start to come out that you didn't realize were there. And I've journaled and just let my thoughts run free. And as I'm exploring what I'm feeling, I'm kind of digging deeper. And it's not enough just to let it out. Push yourself to dig deeper. So ask yourself questions of, why do I feel this way? And don't be happy with your first response. Say, I feel this way because of this. No. Why do I really? And keep asking yourself, dig a bit deeper. Why really? And eventually you kind of pull out this information that you go, that's why. Or maybe you come up with more questions. And a question is great. If you have another question of, well, actually, why do I feel this? Or why did I do this? That's great. That's progress, because you're digging deeper. And then maybe the next day or the next week, you'll come up with another question underneath, and then you might start to find some answers. So that journaling really is the first step, I think.
Yeah. Abby, I think that people, I don't know, but I think a big majority of people are focused on results. They just want to get there, like when you said that I got this PhD. So,
yeah.
So sometimes it's not about the results. It's more about the path, the process. So it's like, to me, I think like it's not like you want to go to a gym and work out for 6 months and then you're gonna forget about it for the rest of your life. No, you have to keep on going every day. So to me, I think that this should be part of your life, of your routine for the rest of your life, because I think that the growth and the healing and the improvement doesn't stop. So I think that you should keep working on it, like keep going to the gym for
Yes.
for often 3-4 times a week. So you have to be committed to that for
Yeah.
for not for some time, but for maybe the rest of your life. I don't
Yeah.
know if you think like that.
It's got to be a lifestyle change. It's got to be something that is part of who you are, just not something that you do. You know, we talk about external rewards because you think, oh, well, I feel bad, but once I get this thing, I'll feel better. Once I buy this car, I'll be worth something. You know, I thought that once I get my PhD, I'll be happy. You know, once I get this lectureship, everything will be good. Once I publish this book, I'll be worth something. You do all of these things. And it's same with our gym goals. Once I meet this weight goal, then I'll finally be worth it. Once I meet this lifting weight, once I meet this lifting goal, I'll finally be worth something. And you reach it, and then you realize, now I need to make a new one because I still don't feel worth it.
Yeah.
And I remember I've had this all my life that I'm like, I'm a failure until I achieve this thing. And then I achieve it and I go, I'm a failure until I achieve this next thing. And then I remember always saying, once I have this in my life, I'll be good, I'll be happy. It's this external thing that's the problem. And then I moved to Florida. I got my dream job. I'm a doctor. I did all these things. And I'm like, I still don't feel good inside. I still feel like a failure. And I realized, because it's me, I'm bringing me to every situation. It's not the situation. And we say, you know, when I go on holiday, I'll move to this place, I'll be happy. And you realize, I'm not, because I'm there. You know, the problem is internal. So you have to make those lasting changes, because it's not about doing one thing or getting to one point. It's got to be an internal process of changes of how you think about yourself and how you treat yourself and how you talk to yourself. And that is consistency. And it doesn't mean every single day you need to go to the gym. Every day you need to achieve this. Every day you need to journal. It's not about that. It's just making it into part of your lifestyle. You know, I try and I'm very routined. And every time I break my routine, I get so angry at myself. And I have to actually remind myself, you are human. It's okay that you woke up half hour later or went to bed without reading that chapter. That's fine. That's human. That's adaptable. That's needed. And we need to remind ourselves that it isn't about every single day being perfect. It's just about working towards being better and really implementing those consistent changes.
Yeah, you said something right now that remind me of a book that I read many years ago. I think you mentioned the author on your book. It's Jon Kabat-Zinn. Did I pronounce it right?
I think so.
Yeah. The book is Wherever You Go, There You Are. And then I remember that book that I read many years ago. And that's what you were saying right now. It's you have to work on yourself, because it's nothing outside will change permanently how you feel. You have to start working on yourself so you can be, because wherever you go, there you are.
Yep. And there's another quote that I love, and it's, you'll never find the same person again, even in the same person. Yeah. And it's because we are always changing. And if you are not willing to change, you're not going to grow. You're just going to stay static, and everyone around you is going to change. And it's the same with us as individuals, but also us as businesses. You know, if a business is implementing a policy and they refuse to adapt to technological changes, to societal changes, is that business going to work? No, it's going to fail, because it won't change. We are no different. We have to change. We have to grow. You know, if you become a mother or a father and go, well, I'm just going to keep being the same way I was before, I won't change at all. Yeah. It's not going to be great parenting. You know, we have that for big things or small things, but we have to be willing to change what's inside, because we'll never change the outside. And there was another book I was reading. I can't remember what the book was. And it was saying about, you know, personal growth and strength doesn't change the bad situations, but it changes our ability to cope with them. So it changes the outcome. Because if you don't work on that emotional resilience, you're going to keep getting in bad situations. So things are going to keep being bad. It doesn't change that bad event, having emotional resilience, but it changes the future bad events, because you learn to put yourself in positive situations and cope with things in a much healthier way.
Okay. Abbie, where can people find your book? Where can people contact you and get more information about what you do and everything about you?
So my book or my blog column, my Forbes articles, my podcast, everything can be found on abbieMaroño.com. And my socials are always Dr. Abbie Official on Instagram. I'm very active on there. And my book can be found, of course, on Amazon, as everything can be found on Amazon. But it can also be found on barnesandnoble.com and, of course, on my website too.
Yeah. Is there going to be an audiobook version of your book?
There will be when I do it. Yeah, my publisher keeps asking me to do it. And I am dyslexic, so reading out loud is always something I shy away from. But if I'm going to do an Audible, I will do it as me and my voice. So there will be one coming. I just can't promise it will be in the next couple of weeks.
And you said that you were already writing a new book. What's the subject of that book?
Yeah, so I'm actually writing a couple. I have two kids' books that are written and coming out, but all of the proceeds from those books will be donated to the ILF for life. And those books are for kids, for child protection. Okay. But I have another book coming out that's called The Upper Hand, Mastering Persuasion and Using Social Engineering to Get What You Want. And that's a book on influence. Wow. And I do have another book that I'm working on that's focused in self-growth and psychology. And I will have a very, very interesting co-author on that book. So I won't give too much information on that, but work in progress. And The Upper Hand should be coming out early next year.
Yeah. Abbie, what I love about your book is that it's not about when you were talking about mindfulness, you're not talking about mindfulness the way everybody talks about it. People say, no, it's good, it's great, it works. No, you explain the science behind it. You provide evidence, so it feels that it's validated what you're saying. It's by science, by facts, and not by the opinion of a TikToker or anything. So
I hate when I read something and the reference is just trust me, believe me. And I write in the beginning of my book, don't trust me. Okay. Let me earn your trust. Let me earn your trust by providing you a book that's founded in science. Yeah. And like you said, I didn't sugarcoat any notions. I didn't say this is going to be a really easy read. I say this is going to be hard and confronting, but this is going to be what you need.
Yeah. It's like people that say on the social media, they say, trust me because I have a Lamborghini here. So
yeah, I see that a lot. The amount of Lamborghinis I see on my newsfeed of, other influencers in Orlando, and having a Lamborghini or having lots of views on YouTube isn't evidence. I want real science, and I want people to want that from me. And when people say, no, I trust you, say, no, don't trust me yet. Let me prove it. Yeah. Let me cite my work. Let me cite other science, and then let me gain your trust and earn it.
Yeah. Abbie, I almost forgot this. I need you to talk about this. That I believe in this, is that I always I appreciate the work of mentors in my life.
Yes.
And also I appreciate the opportunity to be a mentor of other people, because if I'm a mentor, it pushes me to be better. And you've had the opportunity to be a mentee of Joe Navarro, and I would like you to talk about the importance of having a great mentor in your life.
Yes. So I think this is so essential. It's so important to give thanks and be honest about the people that helped us get to where we are. Because as hard as I work, and I work really hard, I would not be where I am today if not for people giving me that opportunity. And they didn't give it to me on a silver platter. I had to earn it. But they opened the doors, and then I proved I was good enough to walk through. But without them, those doors would have been closed. And Miss Moon, the psychology teacher that believed in me when I was younger. Without her, I would not be in psychology. Without Dr. and now Professor David Keatley, I would not have gone into research, because he gave me a chance when I was 19 years old and helped me be a researcher. And then I fell in love with it. And then I met Joe Navarro, and he has opened so many doors because he believed in my ability. He was the person that said, we were going to write a book together, and he's a big time author. And we were writing it, and he stopped and said, "We can't do this." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I don't want you to make your career as, just behind Joe Navarro." He said, "Because if we do this together, you'll always be known as, secondary to Mr. Navarro." And he said, "I don't want that for you." He said, "We'll come back to this, but you need to be your own star." And he really helped me because he gave me that belief. And he also connected me with my boss now. And I would never have met Chris Hadnagy if not for him. And then Chris also took me on. I was very young. I was in a different country. And he met me and said, "No, you are who I want." And he believed in me. And now Judge Shaw, I've been working with Judge Shaw, and he has helped me so much in authenticity and growth and provided me opportunity. And without him, I wouldn't have those. So as much as I believe I'm worth what I have grown into, and I'm excited for what I can grow into, I wouldn't be this person if not for those people. So always make sure that you give thanks to mentors. And if you don't have a mentor, seeking one out is such a huge, huge advantage, both personally and professionally.
Abbie, those were amazing words. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for accepting my invitation to have this conversation, and thank you for being here. And thank you for writing this book. Looking forward for all the next books that you're going to publish.
And thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks again to Dr. Abbie Maroño for this amazing conversation. If you listen to Spanish podcasts, go to episode 192 and listen to our conversation with Joe Navarro, one of Dr. Maroño's mentors. And if you don't listen to podcast episodes in Spanish, well, thank you for listening to this episode. And without further ado, we'll meet in the next episode of Nos Cambiaron los Muñequitos. Hear me next time.